Okay guys, I just thought I was doing a really long video and you know what, it didn't video, but the good news is it was probably really long-winded, so this one will probably be much shorter. So a couple things I wanted to talk about was I know I told you guys how to do brick. Any texture on the left side of the building, those lines will go down to the left. On the right side, they'll go down to the right. On this one, I started doing like rounded edges here. I want to make these guys look like logs. So I did a little shadow like under each log, maybe a tiny shadow on the top because it's like shaded from the one above it. So if you want to do like an area that's made up of logs or lumber, I think that there were a lot of castles that probably had stuff going on like that. So I'm going to do some hatching. By the way, hatching is a way to shade in pen or Sharpie. I'm going to definitely make it dark in between the logs so it looks like those are three-dimensional. Okay. I do that slight shadow underneath each log. Same thing under this one. And then under here, I started doing a stone texture. So after you do brick, if you guys want to go in and start filling in with stone, I did some of those in pencil first, but honestly, at this point, if you feel like you don't want to have to go in and trace everything twice, go ahead and just write it right in the Sharpie. The pen Sharpie is going to be your friend in this area because you'll be able to get lots of details. Another really cool thing is if you start darkening in the mortar and even doing a little bit of shadowing, like I'm just going to shadow the bottom left of each stone. I know that sounds crazy, but the more detail you guys do, man, the cooler these will look. Mackenzie Edwards, she did this castle last year, and she spent so much time on this stone. The stone is so gorgeous. And like I said, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but it's going to hang up in the hallway, that castle from last year. It's an amazing drawing. So yeah, when you're tracing, you don't have to necessarily use the ruler on everything, but just things that you want to look really, really sharp and geometric. In the video, I don't think I talked about doing this X on the top part of the building. It kind of looks like an old German kind of structure if you want to try it. So basically all you have to make sure of is you have to do 2 lines on the edges going up to the top vanishing point on the edge of your upper structure. And then this top line will obviously go down to the left vanishing point. Once I have those 3 lines in, then I just drew in like the center of an X just crossing off. Then I went in and I made the X a little wider. I just used my ruler to widen things up a bit. I showed you guys how to do an arched doorway. The same goes for an arched window. If you guys would like to try that, you're welcome to do a window with an arc above the top. Oops, I forgot the bottom of this guy here. Okay, so if you want to do an arched window, same thing would apply, just like the door. I wanted to talk about a barred doorway and a wrought iron fence. So if you want to do the barred doorway, let me do another one of these real quick off to the side. Yeah, so I'm just going to draw it in, like pretend this is my doorway in 3-point perspective. It gets a little wider at the bottom. This guy would be going up to the vanishing point. Okay, so what you're going to start with is you're going to start with a line through the center from your top vanishing point. So pretend that this line is lined up with my vanishing point 3. The edges of the door obviously would be lined up to vanishing point 3 too. I'm going to do another line lined up with vanishing point 3 going through this side, another line going through this side. Okay, you need to make sure that they're all ending at the same point. So I'm going to come from my right vanishing point. I'm going to do an end point where I will erase the bottoms of those. Maybe it looks like the gate is like halfway open. Okay, each of these lines should get a double line. So I'm going to go with my ruler and give this guy a double line right here. Making sure to line up again with vanishing point 3. This will make the bars look wider at the bottom, which will really make them look like they're in a convincing 3-point perspective. At the bottom of these guys, you can do an ellipse or just like a slight oval. So the bottom of each bar should technically look like this, where you're seeing kind of like the shadowed bottom. Or if you wanted to make it pointy, you could do that too. Just make a point, and then you'd probably want to shade that point once you make it, kind of give it a little shadow on one side or something like that, okay? Wow, that's kind of a terrible point. There you go. Anyway, then you're going to do the bars that cross it. So then I would be, let's pretend that the bottom of my door is going over to this like right vanishing point over here, this mysterious right vanishing point that doesn't exist. I'm going to come in with bars that go behind these ones. So I'm going to go behind the bars. I'm going to stop when I hit the edge of the door. Each bar is going to be composed of 2 lines to make it look a little bit thicker. And then later on, what you'll be able to do with that is you'll be able to create shadows behind each bar, which looks super cool. Sorry, this really stinks. I drew out those first set of bars and I thought I was videotaping when I was doing it. I was actually yelling at my kids in that last video, so maybe it's a good idea that I didn't record that video. Anyway, so I'm going to do a little shadow on the bar behind it, making it really look like those other bars are in front of. the others, if that makes any sense to you guys. So that's how to do a barred doorway. I was talking a lot about Sharpie in the last video. Was I talking about Sharpie in this video? It's all running together, you guys. Okay, I'm going to be short with Sharpie. Some of the Sharpie lines you'll want to look super straight. Like if I was outlining my doorway, I think I'd want the bars on here to look really, really structural, like really sharp and straight, like they're made of wrought iron. So maybe on these ones, I will go in with a Sharpie or with a ruler and do those. But maybe on my stone, then I would want to go in and be a little bit more freehand, filling in the mortar, doing a little bit of shadowing. Yeah, I think I was talking about the Sharpie on this one. Okay. If you wanted to do a wrought iron fence, it would be kind of the same. I started with like 2 lines to my left vanishing point over here. And then I was doing the vertical ones, which obviously in 3-point perspective are no longer vertical. Instead, what those guys do is they go up to the top vanishing point. Again, if you're making a fence or a gate, it would probably be cool to have like a pointy end on there. The difficult thing about making the point in the right area, sometimes the points look kind of crazy, is you should probably start with like a dot right above the center and then kind of connect that dot down to both sides, okay? So that would be how you'd make like a pointy gate off to the side. Okay, that's all I think I'm going to do in this video. I think I'm going to tune back in with color in just a minute. Okay, kids, when it comes to coloring your castles and your backgrounds, you're going to want to trace it all in like a really fine point black pen or a Sharpie, like a pen Sharpie of some kind. When it comes to the backgrounds, you don't have to trace the background in Sharpie, but I would maybe like you to go over the background. Let's say I had like another horizon line back here, and then on that horizon line I had like a tiny little mountain range. What you might want to do is you might want to just trace that with whatever, you know, like colored pencil you'd be using to color back there. So maybe I'll just do like a thin blue line, and then I'll just do a shadow over like one side of the mountain. Something like that, where it's like real wispy, real thin. You might even want to color in the background where it's like not very precise, because usually things that are off in the distance look less sharp. They look kind of like more hazy. So maybe I even want to go in and do like a fog over those mountains. Yeah, so in the background, you don't need to be very sharp, very clear. In the foreground now, you want things to get very vivid. We want people to know this is closer to you. You can see more details on this, etc. So when you start coloring, what I don't want to happen, I don't want you to just color it all the same color. Both sides should not be the same color. Whenever you have planes that are facing different directions, one plane will receive more shadow, one will receive more light. So decide on which side you want to be more in the shadows. And then when you start coloring that side, it should be colored a little bit darker, okay? So the stones on this side are going to be very dark, whereas the stones on this side then would be very light. This side's in the light, okay? You can also do, if you have a stone, or like if you have like the lumber or like the logs going on, or brick, anything, you probably would see a little bit of shadowing going on amongst them. Like, so you might want to even have, you know, them shadowed underneath, or in the mortar be a little bit darker. But definitely along this center line, you'll definitely want to say like, okay, bam, this is the shadowed side. This one's going to be more in the shadows. Now, even though I think I'm going to make my lumber brown, going in with a dark blue to create a shadowed side is a good idea. Even if the left side was going to be orange, I could go in really lightly with a blue and kind of create like a shadowed look over that orange. So each of my logs here, I'm going to go in and I'm going to color kind of like with a cross hatching, where I'm leaving kind of like a line texture. On a lot of these things, you'll want texture. Like on stones, you'll want to leave some texture. So what I'm saying is you guys don't have to color super, super smooth. Now, I'm not saying you need to color messy, like, you know, like just kind of slap it all together. I want you to color neat, but at the same time, I also want you to think about, you know, like I don't know, what kind of texture is this supposed to have? And not everything is the same texture, not everything is smooth. So yeah, so there's that. Okay, so I'm going in, I'm doing a little green on the bottom of the logs, and I think I'm going to go back in with this indigo blue. Indigo is like my favorite color. Anyway, so I'm going to go in with a little bit more indigo, kind of shade the underside of those logs. On the right side, they'd be maybe a little bit, oh, I keep throwing my colored pencils. I'm trying to move quickly. You know how that goes. So maybe on the logs on this side, they'd have a little bit more of like a true brown color, maybe less of that indigo. Maybe I just bring that indigo in like on the shadowed side of the log. Okay, so you definitely want to create this feel like one side is more in the shadows, one side is more in the light. Now, obviously, I would carry this shadowed side over much further. I don't want to be doing this forever. It doesn't have to be solid dark on this side. What you can do is you can gradate out a little bit, like where it gets a little bit lighter as you go over. But I definitely want to be able to look at it from a distance and make, oh yeah, that side's definitely the shadowed side. This side's definitely the light side. If this side is the light side, when you go in to start shading in these like windowsills and door jambs, these guys, however, would be shadowed on this side, okay? Let's say we had a windowsill on this side. What would happen to the windowsill on this side? I'm just going to draw one in really quickly for you. The windowsill on this side would actually receive light then because it's at a different angle. So what I would do is I would leave the windowsill light on the left and I'd shade the inside of the window kind of dark on this side, okay? So it's just opposite. If this side is the dark side of my building, windowsills and door jambs are going to be light. And then on this side, windowsills and door jambs are going to be dark. Notice I am trying to shade around the bars on my door though. Those would be in the light because they're at the front of the door, okay? Same thing in this windowsill will be dark. Feel free to use whatever colors you want. We get a lot of gray castles, so, you know, they all look the same. They all look very, very gray. You know, maybe going in with like a blue-purple mixture and making it kind of look gray, but not quite perfectly gray. You know, I think it's cool sometimes to use, like, then you get a lot of, like, you know, clown castles that are, like, bright yellow and purple and pink and all these, like, bright colors. So it is cool sometimes to use some dingier colors. Or if you really want something to stand out, maybe use bright colors in that one area. And then the other areas use more dingy, you know, muted, like, dark evergreens, maroons, grays, browns, things like that. Obviously, like I said, you'd want to have all the Sharpie done on this first.